All right, everyone, I think we're going to get started. Thank you so much for being here. I am delighted to welcome you to the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom. My name is Carlos Diaz-Rosell. I'm the founding director, and it is a great pleasure to be here. I am particularly honored to welcome the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025. Thank you for allowing us to host this event, an event that will serve as the Florida launch of this historic project. Project 2025 could have chosen anywhere in the country to have this event, and they chose the free state of Florida. So thank you so much. Home of the free. Home of the free, and also home of the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom. Let me just tell you a couple of sentences about the project, and of course, they are going to tell you a lot more over the course of the next hour. This project is the effort of a broad coalition of organizations that have come together to ensure a successful presidential transition should there be a transfer of political power after the 2024 presidential election. It involves policy recommendations and an impressive presidential personnel database to implement those recommendations. Here with us are Paul Dance, former Chief of Staff at the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, during the Trump administration, who is the director of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project, Project 2025. And Spencer Chrétien, former Special Assistant to the President and Associate Director of Presidential Personnel in the White House, who is the project's Associate Director. As I mentioned, we at the Center are delighted to welcome all of you, and I should also mention that we would be equally delighted to welcome at any future event any other serious organization that may have put together a different proposal, a different transition proposal, regardless of the organization's political and policy perspectives. We want to be a convener for all types of perspectives and viewpoints. Let me just tell you a couple of words about us, since we are FIU's newest and I have to say most exciting research think tank, think and do tank, I should say. We aim to inform, to influence, and to inspire current and future leaders to develop and implement innovative, meaningful, and effective public policies to advance individual freedom and human prosperity. The center was established by the legislature and the governor of Florida in 2020 to harness the power of rigorous research to offer a better understanding of the free enterprise system and its impact on individual freedom and human prosperity, both in the United States and around the world. Through our different activities and programs, we hope to inspire and enlighten policy discussions, analysis, and decision-making. And we do so through a number of programs and events like the one we're hosting today. Before we get on with the show, I'd like to just read briefly a letter we received from our U.S. Senator Rick Scott, who couldn't be here with us but wrote a letter that reads as follows. It is my honor to join the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom at Florida International University for the launch of the Presidential Transition Project to promote economic and individual freedom in the United States. Thank you for encouraging our nation's emerging leaders and advocating for the values of freedom. As your United States Senator, I have been fighting to make Washington work for Florida families. It's clear that we all agree it's time to end the dysfunctional status quo in Washington and make sure every Floridian, no matter how they grow up, has the opportunity to get a good job, receive a quality education, and raise their family in a safe community. Florida's incredible success is a testament to the hardworking men and women dedicated to promoting freedom throughout our great state, and now across the nation. Thank you again for your commitment to promoting individual and economic freedom so our nation can be on a successful and sustainable path for generations to come. Rick Scott, United States Senator. In just about 30 seconds, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, but before, I want to acknowledge the many elected officials we have here with us. I don't want to call them by name because I'm going to miss one, and then that's not going to be good. But if you're an elected official, I see 4 of them up here and 1 sitting here, can you just get up so we can acknowledge and thank you for your service? Thank you. All right, now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Congressman Carlos Jimenez. Congressman Jimenez is a distinguished public servant who represents Florida's 28th congressional district with a deep sense of passion and commitment to his constituents. The congressman joined the City of Miami Fire Department as a firefighter in 1975. In 1991, he became the City of Miami's first Cuban-American fire chief, serving until the year 2000. In 2011, he was elected as the mayor of Miami-Dade County. and then was re-elected again for a second term. And as you know, Miami-Dade County is the largest local government in the state of Florida. With a strong record of advocating for fiscal responsibility, limited government, and economic and individual freedom, he has become a leading voice in the United States Congress. His commitment to serving the people of Florida's 28th District and beyond make him an inspiring and effective leader, one who is admired and respected on both sides of the aisle. Congressman, thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's certainly a pleasure for me to be here. And for those of you figuring out what happened to me between the year 2000 and 2011, I was basically hitchhiking across the United States, looking at different things, and then I just came back and became mayor. Actually, what happened was I was a commissioner serving with this gentleman up here, Pepe Diaz, as one of my fellow colleagues on the commission. I did that for about 7 years, and then in 2010, 2011, I actually was elected to the mayor of Miami-Dade County, served 2.5 terms, and then this is my second term serving in Congress, and something I thoroughly enjoy. And it certainly is a pleasure for me to be here, talk to you about economic policies that'll work, conservative economic policies, and then what I think needs to happen in the transition. It's going to be a really short speech, because take everything that President Biden is doing today and do the opposite. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. Which is incredible. Really, think about it. Everything that this administration is doing everything in their power, I believe, to destroy the American way of life. And so let's take examples on good economic policy. So first, how can we onshore and nearshore our supply chain? Well, obviously, you need to attract American companies and other companies to come in the United States or come into Central and South America. So how do you do that? Well, you certainly don't do that by increasing the corporate tax and the tax rate. That's a disincentive for corporations to come to America. But that's exactly what the Biden administration is trying to do. And so a good economic policy is to have a good tax policy that makes sense, that attracts businesses. Businesses employ people. People, in turn, then have money. Money that then they will be taxed on, and jobs that they'll have to create the middle class, recreate the middle class that we are destroying right now. So, number one, good tax policy. And so when you're looking for good conservative policies that will actually create job growth and economic development, it's a good tax policy. Look what's happened look at the blue states and look at the red states. Why is everybody moving to Florida? Why is everybody moving to Texas? Why are they moving out of Illinois? Why are they moving out of California? Why are they moving out of New York? Yeah, crime is the thing, but also their tax policy is crazy. It's ludicrous. It's anti-business. And so the business people that actually create the jobs are saying, okay, we're out of here. And they're moving somewhere else. And they're moving to Florida and Texas and all the southern states, the red states, that are governed by governors that get it. And there's no secret to that. And there's no denying that either. Because for the first time in, I don't know, ever, more people left California than moved in. People are moving out of Illinois. People are moving out of New York. New York lost population. Matter of fact, they should have lost another seat. We should have gained another seat here. But for a couple of months, probably, we would have gained 2 seats instead of 1, and New York would have lost 2. California may have could lose another one in the next census. So tax policy is one thing. Energy. So the Biden administration is doing everything in their power, to destroy the American energy industry. And yet, we know the world is going to need more energy in the future. What is energy? Energy saves lives. Energy creates a better quality of life. And what we're trying to do is we're going to try to tell the rest of the world that you have to be all, not green and the whole thing. And I understand the green argument, but the facts are that America is sitting on the largest reserves of natural gas in the world. America is sitting on huge reserves of petroleum. America produces natural gas and petroleum products 20% cleaner than anybody else in the world. So if you're worried about the environment, and by the way, petroleum products, fossil fuels are going to be, there's going to be an increasing need for fossil fuels in the next 50 to 70 years, no matter what we do. So if that's the case, why shouldn't it be America producing that fossil fuel that the world is going to need, is the world's going to consume, because we do it 20% cleaner. And if you really want to reduce the carbon footprint of the entire world, you will replace coal with natural gas, American natural gas. So we look at our greatest competitor, which is China. China is the builder, builds most of our solar panels, most of our wind turbines actually come from China. The problem is they don't use it. They don't use it. They send it to us. You know what they use? You know how they make their electricity? Coal. They build one new coal-fired plant every single week. China is the world's largest polluter by a factor of 2. And yet, we're worried about us. Maybe you're right. You should be worried about us. But we're letting China get away with murder. And we're actually trying to become dependent on China for our energy. Why? Because they're the largest producer of solar panels. They're the largest producer of wind turbines in the world. They don't use them. So while we could be energy dominant and use it like Russia, like a weapon, it can't be used as a weapon, and help our allies not be so dependent on Russia and other people like Iran and maybe even Saudi Arabia, no, we're going to destroy our energy policy, our energy industry here, doing everything in our power to do that. Third thing you want to look at is immigration. So I'm in favor of legal immigration and having immigration be dictated by what this country needs in order to produce and be competitive around the world. We need immigration. We actually do need immigration, legal immigration. That's not happening. What's happening is we have a wide open border with millions and millions of folks that are coming in. I know that they're looking for a better quality of life. They are, okay? They are looking for a better quality of life. But this country is based on law and order. And so we need to, if you want good conservative policy, and some conservatives may disagree with what I'm saying, is we need immigration reform and we need to control the border and make it legal immigration and open up the world for legal, or the United States to legal immigration to the kinds of people and the kind of talent that we need in order to compete in the world. Why? Because we're not increasing our population like the rest of the world is. By the way, China is going to find out pretty soon what their one-baby policy is going to cost them, because they're going to have a sharp declining population, and their population is getting older and older and older because for many years you could only have one baby. So when you had 2 people, 1 baby, that means your population is going to go down. Here's the other problem that they had. Because of Chinese culture, they actually wanted more males than females. So they actually have, I think, something like 100 million more males than females in China. That's also a problem. So good conservative policy, too, will be a good legal immigration that will, and everybody wants to come to the United States, that will then give us the talent that we need to continue to compete in the world. And then we need to also have legal immigration and to close our borders. Not to close our borders, but to have an orderly immigration process in the United States. Right now, it's totally chaotic. It is killing people. We have more migrants now dying, on the border, more migrants being indentured servants to the cartels that are controlling the border. We need to be a lot tougher with China. We need to decouple from China. Our supply chain is totally dependent on the Chinese Communist Party, And if you think that China has somehow, the Chinese Communist Party has somehow shifted and become more democratic, nothing could be further from the truth. Just ask the Uyghurs. Uyghurs are an indigenous group that live on the northeast portion of China. They are being tortured. They are being incarcerated. Their women are being forced to marry non-Uyghur men. Some of their women are having forced abortions. Some of the women are having to have forced birth control measures on them. What's going on with the Uyghurs is something that finally we've woken up to, and the evils of what the Chinese Communist Party is doing to that indigenous group. And so we have to also wake up. Good policy is, hey, we need to decouple from China. We need to reestablish our own supply chain here in the United States. And like I mentioned before, hey, how about reestablishing that supply chain here in our hemisphere, down in Central and South America, so that we can improve their quality of life? So there wouldn't be that pressure on immigration, and that they can have a good quality of life in their country of birth. And so those are some of the good, I think, the way that I would view the world as being good economic policies that will spur development, give us the talent that we need to be competitive in the world, and that we can compete with anybody. And we can. We still are the greatest economic power in the world. We have a competitor, and it's called, again, China, who wants to be the greatest economic power in the world and the greatest military power in the world by the year 2049. People say, wow, that's a strange year, 2049. It's their 100th anniversary of their revolution. And that's not a secret. That's exactly what they're doing. And I guess if you say, hey, man, he talks a lot about China. Well, I guess it's because it's what I'm doing in Congress. I'm a member of Homeland Security, so yes, I'm very worried about security of our nation, very worried about the southern border and what's happening there, very worried about the fentanyl that's coming in through the southern border that's killing 300 Americans every single day, controlled by cartels and international cartels, criminal organizations. You cannot cross the border unless you pay them. By the way, they have really good economic policy. You know how much they make a month? Anybody? Take a guess. $1 billion a month. That's how much the cartels are making every single month, all right? And they control the border. They control fentanyl production. They are the ones that are pushing their fentanyl up here into the United States, which again is killing 300 Americans every single day. Every single day. Can you imagine if we had a terrorist group coming to the United States and shooting up or killing 300 Americans every single day? How long will we tolerate that? Not long. It's happening every single day. Over 80,000 Americans are dying from fentanyl overdose. And it's all coming, the raw chemicals are coming from China. The production is actually done in Mexico by the cartels, and it's being pushed up through the southern border. And what does fentanyl do? Yes, it kills you, but it also hooks you. Once you get hooked on fentanyl, you're done. It's supposedly the greatest high ever in the world. And so a lot of people, once they have it, they lace drugs with it in order to hook you. So now they got you. And then eventually, you'll roll, snake eyes. Eventually, it'll get you. It's the biggest killer of young people from 18 to 34 in this country right now. So I happen to sit on Homeland Security. I'm a member of the Armed Services Committee. And I also am a member of the Select Committee on the Competition with the Chinese Communist Party. That's why I'm kind of fixated on that, if you will. If you want to work for a next president, hopefully a Republican president, because this country actually really needs to have a Republican president, then study, get your degrees, get your resumes up. There are a lot of intern opportunities in Washington, and I have interns all the time. All my colleagues have interns, and so you start to get a feel of what Washington is all about, and also give you something for your resumes if you want to work for the next administration. And if you do work for the next administration, and if it's a conservative administration, then remember, you're not the elected official. You're not the ones making the policy. You're carrying out the policy. And one of the problems that I'm having right now in Washington is that the administration, the bureaucrats, let's say, all right, that work for that administration or work inside government feel that they know better than Congress people. And so part of the problem is them, but part of the problem is us. We've allowed way too much discretion. Within the law, there's way too much wiggle room that allows for discretion. The ability to create rules that have the effect of law, I think, is something that Congress has given up way too much power on, and it needs to bring it back so that whatever rules are promulgated are actually what the intent of Congress was initially. I don't think that's happening right now. Anyway, I think my time is up. I went too far. But I know that you have a very distinguished panel, and I'll be listening to make sure that you guys say the right things, okay? No, this is what America is all about. It's about free exchange of ideas, and if you disagree, it's fine, and that's what America is about. Unfortunately, I think we're getting away from that. We need to get back to that. Free exchange of ideas, and it's okay to disagree. That's what makes America great. You know, you don't want to have a monolithic thought, either left or right. You want a good exchange of ideas that can sometimes, you know, make you think, oh, gee, I didn't think about that. I didn't see things. I can't see it that way, or maybe I didn't see it from that point of view. There's validity to what that person is saying. We need to start listening to each other a little bit better. So thank you very much for having me here. Appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you, Congressman. All right, so I want to begin with a question about what is Project 25. Paul, if you don't mind, I'm going to hand it over to you so you can tell us about what is Project 2025 and what you've done with this amazing group of organizations that have come together to put this roadmap in place.
Sure, and first I want to say good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Especially thanks to Carlos and FIU and the Adam Smith Center for welcoming us to Florida. Our Project 2025 is to get new blood into Washington, and we couldn't think of a better artery than coming down here to South Florida to find the new blood. As a congressman, thank you for your remarks, sir. Noted, this government is only going to change when people like yourselves and the people listening get involved and commit to doing that. And what we're doing with Project 2025 on behalf of the Heritage Foundation, but we're really 50 major conservative organizations joining forces, is we're going to systematically prepare to be ready day one of the next administration, January 20th, 2025, to hit the ground running. Because the ideas, the policy, the laws, they never take effect unless people, the will of folks like yourselves, can put it into action in government. So what we're trying to do is systematically prepare, and that's why we're inviting you today to become part of Project 2025.
One of the keys to any administration, of course, is personnel. There are over 2 million civil servants, of course, but only about 4,000 and change political appointees. And regardless of the president's party, right, I think everybody could agree that it is really important to have a team in place that carries out the president's agenda. And Spencer served in the Office of Presidential Personnel. Actually, I was sending him an email just a couple of weeks ago, and rather than look it up, I just searched his name, and I didn't realize that he was very helpful to me when I went over to the Department of Defense at DOD. He was in the Office of Presidential Personnel, and one of the things that he had to do was help identify people to work for the administration and then go through the vetting and this whole mess that it is to put in place 4,000 plus political appointees who serve at the pleasure of the president. So I want to ask you, Spencer, can you talk a little bit about the database and a little bit about what that entails?
Sure. Well, those numbers that Carlos gave, you know, you've got 2 million full-time non-military federal employees. You've got somewhere between 16 million, maybe as high as 20 million federal contractors. They're the people who do most of the work of government, but nobody elected them. People elected the president, and the president only has traditionally between 3,000 and 4,000 political appointees. Those are the people, as Carlos said, who serve at the pleasure of the president. I had the honor of working in that space for President Trump in 2020, and you know, it was a real challenge to identify and vet the right people who were going to go into federal agencies and make sure that the people were getting what they voted for and that the president had his team in place. I think we had some successes, but we also learned some lessons. And one of the things that we are doing as part of Project 2025 is we're doing a lot of this work ahead of time on behalf of whoever the next president is. So we're standing up what we call the Presidential Personnel Database. It's at project2025.org. And we are going to come as close as possible to replicating the actual vetting process of presidential personnel, so that beginning with beginning on day one and beginning even before that with the official presidential transition, that we will be able, as the Heritage Foundation and more than 50 center-right organizations, to produce slates of people, recommendations, personnel options for the next president and his or her team.
Can I ask you a little bit more about that? How do you begin the process of identifying those people, and then how do you vet them to make sure that they're the right people?
So there's a lot of talent out there, but it requires, first of all, you got to live in the swamp. You got to live in Washington, D.C., and you can't just look at whoever has done this before. You have to get new blood, as Paul indicated. The most important thing is that you are aligned with the mission and the vision of the president, and that you're willing to work hard. You're going to encounter obstacles from the massive behemoth that is the federal bureaucracy. So you got to have the keen political judgment, and you got to have the willingness to put in long hours, work hard, and most importantly, advance the agenda that the American people voted for. One of the things that we're also doing through this project is our Presidential Administration Academy. So that's actually training people ahead of time for everything from what it's like to live in Washington, D.C., to how to do your security clearance, how to do your financial disclosure, how to deal with the press, how to deal with the career federal employees, and things to watch out for. So hopefully we will have a well-trained cohort of people for next time.
And if I might add to that, just to back up, to give people a little sense of the framework with our project. Like I said, we're 50 groups coming together. This has never happened before in the conservative movement. And you look back with President Trump, he shocked the whole conservative Inc., if you will. But the problem was that people weren't ready to go. So what Kevin Roberts, our president here at Heritage, looked back at how our organization, we're going on our 50th birthday here next week. And the organization, for some of you who know, was seminal in helping then President-elect Reagan stand up his administration, right? And over time, Heritage had also been a kind of a resume on-ramp for people looking to come to Washington. But Dr. Roberts said this go round in 2024 is really the turning point for our country, right? You can't rest on the shoulders of one think tank. We have to join arms with our brethren across the conservative sphere and really, conjoin our efforts, avoid duplication, and stand up something that's going to be a turnkey deliverable to the next president, conservative. We're all focused on the mission. But to that end, what we've done is try to systematically prepare someone, hopefully, who's watching this video, to say, you can do this. You don't have to be in Washington. Actually, we don't want Washingtonians coming up there. We want change makers. We want people like Monica here who are in the arena in local government, people who've been successful in other walks of life. People who haven't been successful. People who get knocked down and get back at it. But what we want to say is we have a program here to bring you to Washington systematically. So we build it on 4 pillars. First, we're rolling out what we call a policy book, Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. That's echoing the 1980 volume that was given to President-elect Reagan. He famously took this book, and it was a chapter by chapter kind of a policy prescription for how each agency could run under a conservative administration. And that he famously put it on the seat of each cabinet member when they came in the first cabinet meeting. We've done that, now retraced it. We had 400 kind of conservatives come together, author that this past winter, folks who have been in government and kind of said, this is how you should be thinking about the Department of Labor. This is the Department of Education. This is, what can be massively reformed in the Department of Justice. So people are
Just
going
like people get a sense, how long is that?
That book is topping 920 pages. It's coming out next week. It will be free at project2025.org. For those who like a hardcover, that will be available on Amazon. You can go to project2025.org. But this is a great work from patriots who came together, giving of their time to really set kind of an agenda. And it's not going to be a perfect sampling, right? We're a diverse movement in the sense that there are some major fissures, and that's going to be up to the next president to straighten out. So we got, a good sampling of conservatives together, said, what's the really the majority opinion here? What's the minority opinion? And where there were, irreconcilable viewpoints, we kind of laid them out and let the next nominee figure out which direction he or she wants to lead the country. So the policy book's coming out, and that will say, hey, if you're on this page, good, you can come work with us. If you don't, this job's really not for you. Second, we're building a database, right? This is going to conjoin all these personnel recommendations from the various groups. So people think, I don't know, I don't have connections in Washington. You don't need connections in Washington. This is the central portal where anybody can have a shot at this. So today we're launching it. We're esteemed to be down here in South Florida, but that's going to be almost like a conservative LinkedIn where you can build your profile. Everything's inward facing. It's not going to be outward facing to groups, but you can put your resume up, your social media, your law review articles, your letters to the editor, detail what you're about and what your interests are, and give us a chance to examine you as a candidate. Third, like Spencer mentioned, we're standing up a training academy. This is both online and in person. This is to tell people how government agencies function, how rulemaking, budgeting process, but also some of the more mundane stuff like how do I fill out a security clearance? What's this going to entail? Do I have to bring my family up here? What are the schools like? All these kind of things that are, we want you thinking now a year and a half out. I can do this, and this is what it's going to take. And then finally, we're really standing up our 180-day action plans, kind of our playbook, if you will. And this is really to hit the ground running. So at the end of this, we'll have people who are aligned. They agree with the book. They're going to be identified in their policy in our database. 3, they're going to be trained up, and then 4, they're going to be really mission-oriented. They're going to have help written their actual playbook, their battle plans. So you'll parachute in. Like Spencer noted, and Carlos too, we have an incredible task in front of us with the bureaucracy. All of us in this group want to take down the administrative state, but that's a lot to say and not to know how to do it. We're maybe 4,000, maybe more, of people who are going to be basically managing a team of 2.2 million. That's a ratio of 1 to 500. Okay, you think about the odds you're up. We can only do so much, but we need that each of those 4,000 or more are actually operating with us, not against us, or just taking up space. So it's a little bit of a longer explanation, but that's how we're systematically preparing. And we want, even if you're not interested in serving, you want to be an ally or someone who's going to think about potentially serving in the future, join the database. And we are going to be looking for people outside the government who can also support initiatives.
And I think that's one of the greatest things about this project is that you're looking precisely for people outside the government, not from Washington insiders, people all over the country who really want to make a difference. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have Monica here on the panel, because she is the target audience for this database, right? Somebody who was very concerned about the direction of education. She was a school teacher for more than a quarter century. She started very, very young, as you can tell. And she was concerned about what was happening with our schools, right? And so she decided, rather than complain, she decided to do something about it and ran for school board. And right now is one of our school board members, as you know, Miami-Dade County. It's the 4th largest district in the country. And so you're one of our school board members. And so if you don't mind, talk to us a little bit about why you decided to run and how you go about making that decision to get involved and how our students could get involved.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
Are you looking to add to the database also people who are interested in diplomatic and foreign service jobs?
Yes, the president is entitled to choose his ambassadors, so.
Yes. So Monica.
Well, to answer your question, how did I decide? What did I do? I prayed a lot because running for office in today's climate that is so polarized and so divided is not an easy undertaking. But I was 28 years in the Florida retirement system, about to retire from teaching at 30 years. And I could either have made a decision to say, you know what, I can do my thing at 2 years and not work anymore, or I could run for office. And I decided to run for office. And the reason I did was because I was talking to a colleague one day. And the colleague said, you know, the silent majority in this country is going to come out and vote. And I said to myself, you know what? The silent majority can no longer stay silent. The silent majority has to start speaking up. Because that's what the other side does. And they're very vocal. And they're very insistent, and that's their prerogative. But we also have that same right too. And we can no longer be afraid, and we have to do what we feel is correct for our country. And especially when it comes to education, and I use this quote a lot because it's one that really hits home. Abraham Lincoln once said, "The philosophy of education in the schoolhouse in one generation becomes the philosophy of government in the next generation." And that is why education, though we might not think it's that important, we might not realize how important school boards are, it is the most critical point. Because if you look at any country that becomes communist or takes on a totalitarian government, what do they always target? Children. They always go in through the educational system. And we must protect our children and instill in them the values and the ideals on which this great country was founded. And we also have to stop teaching them what to think. We need to start teaching them how to think. And that is critical. And that's why I decided to run. I could see in textbooks the slant of, and I'll piggyback off of Congressman Jimenez's point of the green issue. And yes, we must, and I always did as a teacher, instill the importance of respecting the environment. But if you look at the textbooks, they're laden with a one-sided point of this green energy. I have no problem with presenting that point. But also we need to present children with the other side so that they can make their own minds up. We also have to stop injecting ideologies into our classrooms and stop having children become small activists on these ideologies. We have to teach them the skills that they need to become critical thinkers, problem solvers, and ultimately the citizens that we need to help this country prosper and continue on the course of freedom. And that's why I decided to run for office in a nutshell.
So right here, between the front row and Monica, we have 6 elected officials. On this side of the table, we have 3 appointed officials, former appointed officials. And so a question for the two of you is you're targeting individuals who really want to get involved to apply for an appointed position. What do you tell? We have a lot of young students here who might be thinking about entering the database and serving their government. But like you said, they have no connections, they don't know anybody who's currently working in the administration. How do you think they should go about deciding whether they run for office, they go for an appointed position? In your experience as somebody as two individuals who went through the process of becoming a political appointee, Spencer, in your case, as somebody who vetted dozens of political appointees. What advice do you have for them?
Well, the overall advice is don't sell yourself short. You can do it. I was 28 when I was a special assistant to the president. I was, reviewing people who were twice my age. But what you have to do is, get involved in causes that you care about. Go to every networking event. Do all that sort of thing. But the good news now is that this presidential personnel database will act as its own funnel into the next administration. And then, familiarize yourself with the Plum Book, which contains all of the political appointments. Identify, what issues you care about most. If you really like transportation policy, well, maybe the Department of Transportation is what you're most interested in. So familiarize yourself with the policy issues and the agencies that touch on all those issues, and try to identify for yourself a few potential roles that you would want. And just remember that being a political appointee, serving at the pleasure of the president, it's not like going to usajobs.gov and applying for something. It's different. It's not the competitive service. That's called the competitive service. This is called the accepted service. So we, in my old office, the Presidential Personnel Office, we decided who was qualified. We decided who had the right experience. I had to think, what would President Trump say if he were sitting right here and he were interviewing this person? So it's not like the normal federal hiring process. Don't psych yourself out and say, I could never do that, or I don't have, a PhD, or I've never argued in front of the Supreme Court, or any big things like that. We need Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith to come to Washington. That's what this is about. Paul?
Well, I would second everything Spencer said. Remember, these jobs they range from confidential assistant to assistant secretary, or ambassador. So it's everything in between. And to become one of these appointees takes mostly determination, right? But you have to have the inspiration to do it in the first place. I myself I was an attorney in private practice in New York. I had gone to MIT undergrad and graduate school, and was active in law school and kind of politics, but put that away and went up to New York. I actually, of all things, came down here to South Florida and worked actively on a case called Chevron Ecuador, for those who know. And I love, this is my place here. But being up in New York City as a conservative, you're kind of hiding in plain sight there. And I guess even until recently here in Miami and Miami-Dade, you've been a little overwhelmed. But the tide has turned, and it's what Monica's saying is now's the time to stand up. There's no more room for retreat. I mean, as Floridians, there's nowhere left, guys. It's the water. You got to start marching northbound. And that's why we're coming down here. We want to inspire you to try to go up and make a change in Washington. These political appointee positions, you can do so much by sticking to your guns and being resourceful, and most of all, working hard. It takes problem solvers. It takes people who are happy warriors, but it also takes people who are going to be able to suffer and take some of the blows, because this is not easy work. When you come out of government, you don't get the arms wrapped around you and given these private sector cushy jobs that are the libs seem to fall into. So it is public service. At the end of the day, look, we inherited this incredible country going on 250 years. You think that you don't have to put in your time now? This is your moment to go and serve your country. Your grandparents did it. Your sons and daughters may be doing it, your uncles, whoever served, and the folks stayed behind and supported it. I think we're at a major juncture here. So what we hope is that anyone listening to this will create a profile who's interested in serving, and take the coursework and keep building. Like Spencer said, you keep networking for it. You build up a subject matter fluency. You can't just march in the federal government. You have to have an interest in kind of both a skill set, maybe it's technical, maybe it's PR, maybe it's managerial, finance. But you also should have an underlying grasp of the policy of the subject matter of Department of Labor, EPA, whatever the case may be. And you can use this time now to get up to speed. Write articles, write, join a movement, stand up events, push back on the Biden administration. All those things will be cataloged. And what we need in this next government are activists, people who are forward-leaning, who have gone into the battles, into the arena like Monica, and are ready to basically go to the show and come and prove it, at the really national level. So.
Let me ask you another a practical question that I always tell students about the importance of what they do on social media. I remember when I was in the White House that social media posts were problematic for a lot of appointees. Any specific advice about what our young students should or should not be posting on social media as it relates to a potential administration position?
Well, I think in general, just be careful. The number one thing not to do is say nasty things about the future president you'd like to work for. We had some issues with that in the last administration with people who were in the administration who, had said nasty things about the president. But, I think keep it family friendly, keep it political if you want to, but stay within the guardrails, I think. But probably delete accounts every once in a while too.
But the vetting is pretty extensive, right?
The vetting's pretty extensive. We had a whole team of vetters and presidential personnel who, would take the information that folks had submitted and then, do a pretty deep dive on their public statements and social media.
Let me ask you a question. Paul, you worked in an office in an agency that really set policy for federal employees. And one of the complaints that we often hear is how difficult it is to move the bureaucracy. These are people who are not elected by anyone, who oftentimes are at odds with the political leadership. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience working for this agency that had to move this bureaucracy that is so difficult to move?
Sure. Well, I would even back up. I was saying that I was an attorney in private practice, and I had been, a supporter of President Trump and always doing kind of election law things at each presidential cycle. But I, found myself at the right moment in life when my family said, hey, let's take a shot at going to serve in Washington. So I started at this in 2017. By mid-2019, I'd basically given up. It wasn't going to happen. I'd go to conferences, and I was up in New York. I didn't go down to Washington. Lo and behold, I had this background in city planning. I was able to get in at Dr. Carson and work on HUD. That was great experience to learn really, how does this bureaucracy work? What we're trying to do in this program is teach you everything maybe I picked up in 6 months on the job, have you learning it beforehand. I got the offer here in February to shift gears, and at that point, after the phony impeachment had fallen off, the president was really beginning to spread his wings and brought in a new vanguard at the Office of Presidential Personnel, PPO, and John McEntee on top of that. And they asked me to go to Office of Personnel Management. Most people don't know about this agency. This agency oversees the 2.2 million workforce, but it's actually run by kind of careers, and the irony is that you have a bureaucracy being managed by the bureaucracy, but it never was supposed to be like that. When it was at its initial inception, it was managed even by President Carter, who brought it into its being, by politicals with the aim of putting political control over the bureaucracy. So I got in there, maybe it was kind of my MIT problem solving or my legal background, but I started by reading the law and the background of this agency. And you determine, first of all, how far afield this thing has departed from its original moorings. And then you kind of ask yourself, you know, obvious questions like, why don't we have political leadership in this agency? And you find Obama holdovers or careers who are in acting positions, and you just make a change. And so, you know, what happened there was we were able to create change in a very short period of time. For example, the political hiring, this is bringing on the appointees, right? The Schedule C appointees for the president. That had been gummed up by actual, I don't know, maybe it was ineffective politicals or recalcitrant careers, but it was taking 6 months to bring on people, you know, from the private sector, and you're getting the runaround, and they're looking at your resume, and they're back and forth, and they're saying, you know, we can't pay you this much. How would you like to take a 50% pay cut and come to Washington and be miserable and like drop your family? So it's like, this is going nowhere. What we did was we troubleshooted that and said, you know, we're the ones who are supposed to be making these decisions to hire people. You're not supposed to necessarily be working with at the direction of the career staff. This is the accepted service. So we did elemental things like telling people, no, we set the pay. That's not determined by the career staff. That is determined by the secretary through his appointees. 2, we said the database where people have to get their paperwork done. We learn how to do that as politicals. We don't rely on the careers to enter the data. Train yourself to do the database. So we were able, in a month's time, shorten that hiring period from 6 months to like 2 weeks, which brought in a whole bunch of blood and new actors, and that change reverberates throughout the whole federal government. So you became what used to be no PM, right? That was the joke, that you'd ask this agency for permission for something and it would be a no, but now it was being, you know, managed by political control. So that's what we were able to do. But why did it take so long? That's a story for a much longer debate. But the bottom line is, it almost takes an outsider to come in, folks like you who aren't steeped in the ways of Washington, who aren't looking for your next job in Washington when this thing ends, you know, who are saying, no, you know, the president got elected, that, you know, elections have consequences, and we're going to follow through on what was promised to the voters, and it's pretty elemental. So I think, you know, that agency in particular is going to be a critical one. It's where a lot of the housing for the deep state is. So we need problem solvers, but not just at OPM, across the government.
I want to ask each of you for a concluding thoughts, and then we're going to open it up for questions. But I do want to put our elected officials a little bit on the spot during the Q&A. If you want to say anything about, we have 2 county commissioners and 2 mayors who haven't spoken, so get ready. I might be calling on you to see if you want to share any words of wisdom. But before that, and before we turn it over to your questions, I want to get a concluding thought from each one of you. So Monica, I want to ask you, as part of that concluding thought, you've been in the school board for not too long. Mm-hmm. You ran against an incumbent who was there for many, many years, and your election was pretty high profile. Has it been worth it?
I would say yes, it has been worth it, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It's an opportunity to create policy that's going to, you know, make a change for kids. So that's and their education, and in the largest school district in Florida and the 4th largest in the nation. So it was worth it. It was intense. It's not for the faint of heart. Running for office. You have to have thick skin. Don't take things personally. And just keep your eye on the goal, and what your goal is and what you set out to do, and stay true to yourself.
And we have a lot of great elected officials here in Florida, and the challenge is going to be encouraging some of you to come to Washington during the next administration, and keeping some of you here, because we need good talent here and in Washington. Paul, there are a number of transition projects put together by different think tanks. What is unique about Project 2025?
I think just the breadth of this. This is the 50 leading conservative organizations. This has never been done before. And, you know, it's really, I think, a testament to the hunger, both around the Washington kind of the think tank groups, but really out here in America, that this project's really going to succeed. So I think, we are building something new here, and that's not a lot of our membership, to be sure. Go to project2025.org and you can see all the various groups that are aligned with us. We have everywhere from like Conservative Partnership Institute to American Center for Law and Justice, and everyone in between. We don't want other groups not to prepare for the transition, but with us, we're really conjoining it. We're a force multiplier, and that's what I think makes Project 2025 stand out.
Spencer, you get the last word. If there's one big takeaway that you want people to take away from this presentation and from Project 2025, what would that be?
Sure, and feel free to cue the last slide if we do have it. My biggest takeaway would be you can do it. You can work for the president. If I can do it, you can do it. We have got to restore political control of the bureaucracy. As the congressman was saying, we need legislators to control the legislative branch, and we need the executive, the president, to control the executive branch, because they're the ones who are elected. And what the system that we have constructed has gotten pretty badly out of hand, and we need in 2025 a full fleet of political appointees who are going to dive headfirst into taking back the government and deconstructing this administrative state that has been built up over the years. And you can see on the last slide there, you can just text Miami to 31200 and stay involved with the project. We're going to have some exciting things coming out over the next weeks and months.
Thank you. Now, before we turn it over, if any of our elected officials, you don't have to, but you can if you want to. You have a microphone for anybody who wants to. Why not?
Voluntold, as they say, right? Having worked as President Trump's state director here in Florida in 2020, a lot of us, went through similar things, hoping that maybe we could have been the new folks for the for the next administration, the second Trump administration. But what I will encourage folks is to get involved. Because a lot of times you hear folks, they identify the problems, they see the need for good people to get involved, but they don't get involved. I myself worked in freight forwarding for many, many years, nothing to do with politics, but always wanted to get involved. And back in 2014, I volunteered, got involved with then candidate Carlos Curbelo running for Congress, and we unseated an incumbent. And now, a good number of years later, I've worked for different candidates, President Trump's campaign, and now I'm a county commissioner. So for those that want to get involved in politics, whether it be on the staff side or whether it be on the candidate side, I just encourage you to get involved. And getting involved is not necessarily having to go to your job immediately and do it, but volunteer. Because I tell everybody that's the best job I've ever had, as a volunteer in politics, right? Because you show up when you want, you leave when you want, you can't really get yelled at, you get free food. It's the best. So I would just encourage you all to get involved, find a candidate that you identify with, an issue at a different level that you might think is important to you personally, just get involved. And I think that will be a certain level of fulfillment and as you progress in this.
I'm just a small town mayor, so I handed over to my friend Commissioner Mayor Pavilion. I'd like to shout out to Miami Young Republicans who are here and put them all together.
First and foremost, I want to say thank you to this distinguished panel and the idea and putting the 50 entities together. That makes it fail-proof, I guess you could say. But I also, great shout out to my dear friend, colleague, and a person that's representing us extremely well in the United States. Carlos, thank you for everything you do for us. And to a great mayor, too, that we've worked together for a long time. I've been around the block a little bit. 31 years I've been in office, and I'm very blessed to be able to say that. And in turn, it gives me a little bit of knowledge and look back at when I started, and I heard the stories, and I see Monica is doing an incredible job right out the chute, doing what she said she was going to do and doing it fast, not taking a lingering time. Doing it well. And I'm very proud and I'm glad I had supported you too. So with that said, we have a lot to do, but it's not the same as it used to be. There's a lot of metamorphosis going on in this great world of ours, and a lot of things are changing. So the most important thing is having people that are dedicated, that believe in something, and that are conservative in thought and in will, and in actual knowledge in doing things. And I think this is what's been said in 2 or 3 different versions as to the need that we need to have those people in the right offices. So as a little Cuban refugee that came to this country, thank God, was drop-kicked here back in 1962. I am so proud of this country, and I'm honored to have served this country also as a Marine, and that's where I started helping people. And you're right, helping, getting involved, is the start of everything. And I think that's the common discussion between everything that's been said. So those of you that are listening and want to do something, please get involved. That's the way we all started. I believe everybody that's in office and everybody that's been appointed to office. So God bless you. And I got to move on to my next spot, but I hand the mic over to my dear colleague. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, this is just more comfortable for me. So, you know, Monica really touched me with the testimony that she gave, as did the congressman, who I admire both of them dearly. And, you know, everybody's talking about getting involved. And I think that that's why we're here. And it makes me think of specifically my grandfather, right? Person who I call my grandfather. And the reason being is because during World War II, when the world was under attack and democracy was at stake, he lied about his age to join the Air Force and fight a regime that was going to destroy the world, the Nazi Party. And the reason I think about that is because sometimes I wonder what type of man I would have been when that happened. Because there was people, like ex-presidents, who didn't. They didn't want to fight. They didn't stand up. And there was people in Germany that could have stood up, but they didn't stand up. And they didn't do what they had to do to make sure that evil didn't prevail. And so during, you know, the 2020 election really hit me, you know. I'm not a crier, you can ask my wife, but I cried. I cried because I felt like freedom had lost. But more importantly, I felt like we could have done so much to reach the youth. And you know, the young Republicans are here, and I give it to them because they did so much to get Miami-Dade where we are right now. And our great governor, Ron DeSantis, who, by the way, appointed me, did so much to show people what you have to do to fight and to not care what people say about you. You know, there's a saying that says, courage is contagious. And I think that that's what we should leave here today. You know, these folks are telling you to get involved, and it's for a reason. Because, folks, if we don't get involved now, if we don't fight, if we don't become activists, if we don't do everything we can to protect freedom, we're going to lose it. So, get involved.
Thank you. All right, questions? And I'll ask that you introduce yourself, say your name and where you're from, and we can begin with student questions. Don't be shy. See that most of the students seem to be on this side of the room, I think, but go for it. You want a microphone? So we can capture it on the video and streaming. There we go.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Carlos, for this fantastic event. My name is Tanya Harudner. I am a proud Panther alum, having a degree in political science, criminal justice, and certificates in public policy and national security. I am looking to get involved, and as such, I'm clearly older, so I would be a career change. And I've spent the past 30 years in real estate, international sales, and what have you. So my question would be, what advice would you give or suggestions would you give for someone like myself who's older and looking to make a career change to make a difference?
Well, this is the project for you, really. I was at Office of Personnel Management, and I was one of the first times I'd been a lawyer, and it's very regimented in the big law firms, right? They have a little ladder you get in, and particularly for women, it's difficult because at the same time you're starting your family, the professional demands get the greatest. But when I went over to Office of Personnel Management, I suddenly was in a chief of staff role. I was also the White House liaison there, so I was able to start recruiting my own staff. And I particularly look for people with life experiences. I'm going to say it right now. Moms of 4 basically had to talk themselves out of the job. Like people who raised a family, who stepped out and came back in, that's who we want. It maybe, the bottom line is this is intuitive. Life experience is what makes us conservatives. Breaking news, we're all going to die. At least I hope we are all going to die. That's maybe an AI situation for later, but as you go through life, I think you're particularly raising a family, going through hardships, surmounting them, believing in yourself. Those are all critical things. If you can communicate that in your work and then commit yourself like Monica did here, change gears, there's more than one career you can do, and this could be the beginning of a great second career. So I would say pick your subject matter, develop it, study, write, network with the people in it, go to conferences, and then just be persistent. The only last thing I would say is I was, oddly, I hadn't done a lot of hiring, and I was getting overwhelmed. And I was there on Friday night at 8 o'clock, and I'm signing. And anybody who got a job, I had to sign their paperwork. So there were thousands of things, but it all came from Spencer and these guys at the White House. So, and I remember this woman from California. She just she met me, and then she emailed me, and she was calling me, and she's like, "You didn't respond to my email." And I'm thinking, I'm a pretty senior guy. I'm kind of somebody here. And this person from California keeps badgering me. I'm like, did she? And then it dawned on me. It's wait a second. I could get this person working for me. So when you're in that position, never forget. Busy people get tons of emails, and the people who get the grease are, you have to keep pushing it. That just because someone didn't respond to your email doesn't mean that you take that as a rejection. Just keep pushing harder. So the willingness to go out there and perform, though. Once you get in this position, if you're not moving the thing forward, don't take the job. Basically, there are too many people there trying to get to the next perch of their law firm or wherever professionally, and we can't afford that anymore. We don't have any leeway here. So
in the spirit of persistence, I
Sure.
can bring my printed resume.
Fill it out. Text Miami. That's we are doing this all online too. I appreciate that. But remember, this database is really we want people to curate his or her own profile, and the more you embellish it and highlight it, it will come to people's attention.
I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but if you've made your money and you're happily retired, you're uncancelable. And that's always an advantage when you're working for the president.
That's a really good point about being persistent. Oftentimes you don't get a response to that email the first time or second time. It's not personal. It's not that they don't want you. It's that you're overwhelmed. In these positions, you get so many emails and so many phone calls that a non-response doesn't mean no. So being persistent is really, really important. Yeah. Any other questions? And before we get to the question, I forgot to mention that there are a couple of people affiliated with the university who were part of this massive 900-page book. Karen Skinner, who's a fellow at the center, was involved. And another faculty member, Mario Loyola, who's right here with us, teaches here at FIU, is also involved in writing the chapter on CEQ. And so we have talent right here at FIU who are part of this massive book. All right, any other questions? Don't be shy. Yes?
Hi, my name is Ed Vidal, and I'm a lawyer. Okay. Ed Vidal. I'm a lawyer and election integrity activist here in Miami, and I'm a friend of Mike Gonzalez back in Washington and Karen Jarrett, who's here. And it seems to me what you're doing is really good and very worthwhile. But I would challenge the premise. I would say, why do we need 2,200,000 employees in the federal government? I would say the first thing that the new President Trump or DeSantis should do is have a government shutdown. And then fire all the non-essential personnel that were not required to come in. The only way America will regain its freedom is if we first have a real estate slump in Washington and its suburbs. So what you're doing is great, and I'm glad you're recruiting people. But I would challenge the premise. I would say, why do we need 2,200,000 government employees? And should they be in Washington? Should they be dispersed around the country? And maybe some of those agencies should be privatized, like the CDC. And Congress can decide whether they want to fund them every year or not. Okay, so I'd say privatize, disperse, and then cause a real estate slump in Washington and its suburbs, which had the wealthiest suburbs before you, and so it's great. It's great that you're recruiting this 4,000 strong management executive force, but I'd say get rid of the 2 million first. So what do you say to that?
Yeah. I mean, you're on point. The point of it though is you need to get the 4,000 plus in place to be able to accomplish the latter. It doesn't just deconstruct by itself. It actually grows on its own. So I think we're in violent agreement that the federal government is bloated. Look at what Elon Musk did with Twitter, and you look at any organization, it's going to have some bloat. But the reality of it is this has been fashioned over time. It's an intricately woven group of career people who have their livelihoods tied up in this. They have incredible networks reaching from Congress all the way through the press. And there are tools to be sure, but that, again, it takes human agency. It takes someone dusting off the federal code or reading up and actually implementing, whether it be a reduction in force like you're talking about, or having the political will to say, perhaps that you do head to a government shutdown. How does that play out? And that takes skilled political management to be able to absorb that sort of shock and make it successful. So we can't have one without the other. And you have to flood the zone first. I know it's a little counterintuitive. To make the thing smaller, you're going to have to make the political control larger.
Yeah, I think the things you're describing are not inconsistent with each other. And in fact, one thing we have seen is that when federal agencies relocate outside DC, a lot of the staff don't come along. And then I would also say we have a gentleman who's involved with this project by the name of Don Devine. He was President Reagan's director of OPM, and he has probably fired more federal employees than anybody else who's alive today. We're looking at all of the tools in the toolbox when it comes to shrinking the size and scope of government. But the one thing is, we can't say that because we believe in small government, we're not going to fill the political jobs. That's the one thing we're definitely not doing. You need to fill every political appointment.
One thing, I worked in the administration for 4 years, and before I was a faculty member studying, writing, teaching about presidential power. So I'm a presidentialist. I believe in vast presidential powers. That said, part of the key to shrinking that is right here in Congress. Congress has to, Congress appropriates the funds for these jobs, and so it would take back to Congress to really slash a lot of these jobs if Congress wanted to. So I would encourage Congress to take the axe and cut away.
Microphone?
I do agree that we have way too many employees. So, I harken back to when I was mayor of Miami-Dade. The first thing I did was I brought every single agency in front of me, and we ended up slashing 2,000 jobs out of 28,000. So almost 10% of the force we slashed. Didn't miss a beat. We do need to do the same. I disagree about shutting it down. That's the easy way out. You got to do hard work, and then say, and also we need to look at ourselves as a country and say, all right, what are we as the federal government, what are we supposed to do? What is our primary mission? And then start to prioritize those things that are important, and then completely defund things that aren't. Eliminate entire programs, and maybe eliminate entire agencies, okay, that are not part of our core mission. And that's also something I did as mayor. What is it that we do? So look, one of the things I did is I got rid of actually providing the Head Start services in Miami-Dade, gave it to the school system. That's their core mission, not my core mission, right? So, you know, gave it to them. We ended up saving money to the fact that we could actually serve 500 to 600 more kids with the same money, right? Because we were super bloated in the county. Same thing is in the federal government. The problem that I have with my colleagues is not too many of them are executives. They're legislators, all right? They really have never run something. And so that's the advantage I have on it. Say, hey, look, we have to do this, 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 and this. They look at me like, what? Yeah, this is what we have to do, this, 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 and this, in order to start really, you know, cutting down into the government. But you're absolutely right. We have way too many. And by the way, we may have too many people in the Pentagon, all right? And so, you know, I'm looking at that too. Not trigger pullers. No, we don't have enough of those, all right? But we may have too many of the people that are in the Pentagon running around creating jobs for each other. And we're wasting money on that instead of actually getting more trigger pullers and also weapon systems that we need. So I'm going to be looking at that too. So yeah, you're absolutely right, except don't shut it down, do the hard work, and then do it the right way.
Any other questions? Yes, we have one and one. Let's go.
Hi, my name is...
Microphone coming your way.
Which way?
Front.
Hi, my name is Pedro, and I'm a congressional legislative attorney, and as well as a Christian leader for the Leadership Institute. And I was wondering, I too wish to work in the next presidential administration, hopefully it is a conservative. But I was wondering what issue in terms of public policy do you think is going to be the most pressing in both primary and then the general election, and then as well as in the next presidential administration?
Well, I'll go first. I think some of the issues that the congressman touched on in his keynote remarks are going to dominate the conversation. We've got a crisis at the border. It's a humanitarian disaster. We have we need a full spectrum energy policy. People always care about, you know, the price of gas. And then we've got a bureaucracy that is incessantly woke. All these three-letter acronyms at the agencies, and corporate America and academia follow that. It's all because the government does it first. So I think you'll hear candidates on our side talking a lot about those types of issues.
I would add national security. We have a foreign policy that meanders. We do whatever we can to turn our back to our allies and bend over backwards to try to befriend our enemies. And so I think national security has to be front and center. I don't know if it will be for the election, but for the next administration, without a doubt. And of those, the most important by far is our relationship with China. The congressman talked about China before, and I think historians are going to, I think, in the future, write about one of the greatest accomplishments of the Trump administration as putting a spotlight on the threat that the Chinese are presenting. For decades, Republicans and Democrats pursued a policy that simply did not work, appeasing the Chinese, trying to bring them to our side. Guess what? That doesn't work. And so I think our relationship with China is going to be critical for the next administration, and making sure that people understand, people around the world understand that this is not a friendly relationship. This is adversarial, and we need to do whatever we can to make sure that we're on top. Because if we don't come out on top, the alternative is not pretty. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for your time. My name is Sofia Salgado. I'm from Barranquilla, Colombia. And my question is, do you think that the next conservative president could be a woman? And do you think, or maybe give me an advice? I would like to work in public service.
Nikki Haley hopes it, right?
I mean, we're certainly going to have a conservative woman president at some point, and it could well be in 2024. So I think you, as someone aspiring to work in public service, you should keep that in mind. I think that it's most important we get a conservative period. But I do think women are very well suited to working in government. You know, it's probably been more male dominated historically, but you should, you know, like any of the other advice, it applies equally to male or female. You got to do your homework ahead of time. You have to develop your skill set. You have to have a little bit of a profile, get yourself published, network, and be able to point to one or two things that really make you stand out. So they'll be like, that's the woman who did this or wrote that or won this case. And so, yeah, it's by no means preclusive. And I would say, you know, the other thing is you can apply for these jobs in the federal government. You don't have to wait. There's usajobs.gov. And those are the competitive service jobs. So for students, go apply to the federal government now. Get to know it from the inside, and then, you know, come time for political appointments, you can actually get appointed by the president and go back to your career job afterwards. But for anyone looking to serve, by all means, go to usajobs.gov and look at those things and get involved, and you'll really learn how an agency works from the ground up.
Anybody else? I would say, of course, representation is very, very important, but when you get to those senior jobs in the federal government, when you're in the Situation Room, it matters a lot less whether you're male or female, black, white, Hispanic, Asian. What matters is the ideas you bring forward. And so I think the best advice is be prepared. Again, regardless of your identity, your gender, your race, it's the ideas that you bring forward. And I don't remember a single meeting in the White House or in the federal government where people listened to the speaker more because he was a man or a woman. We listened to good arguments and arguments backed by evidence and the strength of those arguments rather than the gender of the person, which I think is the way it should be. Mario, you want to take it away?
So I just wanted to add something practical to what these guys have said. Is don't forget internships, right? If you know somebody, any of these people who have been in the White House before, they still have friends secretly among the career staff that might be there, and they can help you get an internship there. And if you can spend the summer there, there's one thing that I really want to impress on all of you is that it's a very short jump from where you are right now to being in the government making a real difference. And speaking of influential women conservatives, I wanted to mention Elena Kagan, who is not a conservative, but has been kind of an influential conservative in my life, certainly because of an article she wrote in the Harvard Law Review in 2000 called Presidential Administration. That was after she had served as head of the Domestic Policy Council under Clinton. And the reason I mention this article to you is that it is full of all of the tools that the Clinton administration used in order to impose political control on the federal executive branch. And having read that article when I started at the White House with Spencer and Paul and Carlos, I hit the ground running with a lot of ideas that things like little phrases, 3 words that could be inserted into an executive order that would open up an entire 2 years of work for us on the Council on Environmental Quality and be able to have real impact on the entire direction of the federal government. So, you know, there's that article right there and other things that you just inform yourselves about how these administrations actually work will give you a lot of ideas about things that you actually want to do, practical things that you actually want to do, what office you might want to serve in, whose job you might want to have right now that you're sure you could do better than they're doing now, which is there's a lot of jobs like that. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
That's actually really good advice. It's a very long article, Harvard Law Review, but it teaches you just how many tools a presidential administration has to be able to get the job done. So it's a very, very good article.
Yeah, study what the current administration is doing, study what other, the Obama administration did. They're very good at it. And they have the point of this project is to bridge those gaps and turn, people who believe in freedom into experts in governmental effectiveness.
All right, we have time for one more question, if there is one. If not, we'll be around here. Elias, is there a question? Go for it.
Very good
concluding question.
Someone who had to step out asked me if, do you have to be a U.S. citizen to apply for these positions?
So most jobs in the federal government do require American citizenship, but there are opportunities for people. Probably the most common thing is in American embassies abroad. A lot of people who are local to that country get hired to help, but there are special authorities for hiring non-citizens in some cases.
But for the most part,
yeah,
it is U.S. citizens, with a few exceptions. All right, so we'll stick around here if you have any other questions. But thank you so much to our elected officials, the congressman, and everybody for being here. Thank you to the Heritage Foundation. I'm 2025. Thanks.